What is up, everybody? This is John with Archer Fish. How's it going? Another video for you. Like I said, I'm going to be doing a lot more videos like this year. A lot of how-to stuff, gear breakdowns, recommendations, reviews, all of that stuff. I'm planning on getting a lot of new gear, and I'll be here to review it for you so you don't have to buy something that you may not be conducive with. I've got a lot of gear in the past that just didn't work out, so I'm going to be throwing all of that stuff on my YouTube. And of course, lots and lots of fishing videos. I'm gonna go to new lakes this year, try some new techniques like I did last year, probably fish more than I did last year. Still gonna try to get a boat, which is gonna open up so much more for me and the channel. So I'm gonna be trying to do that as well. Before I go further with this video, please do me a favor. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and also, I think more importantly, hit the notifications button so you get notified when I drop a new video. That's going to be important very specifically for fishing report stuff. When I start hitting it hard and I start getting out there and getting to these new lakes, you're gonna wanna know the most up-to-date information and fishing reports from these places. I can tell you if they're biting it at San Vicente in the spring. I can tell you if the spawn is on at Casitas or Castaic. I can tell you when the top water explodes at Castaic. But you gotta hit that notification button so you'll be the first to know and you can get on that water. I'm gonna be uploading stuff a day or two at the most after I've hit a lake hard so you can get up-to-date information. That is one of the primary reasons I made this YouTube, was so you can get up-to-date fishing report information in all these lakes in Southern California that can be very tricky to fish. So please hit the notification button, hit the like button, subscribe button, share the video with people that you think might benefit from the information and the entertainment value provided in the fishing videos. So today I'm gonna talk about something I learned a lot last year, and that is crankbait fishing. I'm also going to recommend a couple of casting setups that I used a lot of last year. If you watch my videos, when I hit Kachuma and when that crankbait bite picked up, that is basically all I threw the rest of the year. For months, it was just crankbait, because it's a very exciting bite. It's power fishing, it's quick. You can just cover so much water and you find those hungry fish very fast. So I'm gonna be doing a lot of techniques, new techniques like this year. But what I'm talking about today is the casting setup for the crankbait fishing and how I did it. Look, there's guys who have been crankbait. I crankbait fished in Florida a lot, okay? You can do pretty much any kind of fishing you want down there. When I first moved out here, I didn't realize that certain techniques are very season specific. So if you go out in April, crankbait fishing, it may not work at some lakes, you know, most lakes, most likely. So you learn that the finesse techniques in the spring are kind of the best way. Same with like wintertime. Then in spring, depending on the conditions, you can catch fish with the crankbait, the jerkbait, spinner baits, also depending on the lake. So all of those variables come into play with this type of fishing out here, which is what I've learned over the past 5-6 years of really fishing hard in all these Southern California lakes. So also, before I move forward, this gear, everything I'm recommending, you can get it down in the link in the description. It's going to be an affiliate thing to where it helps out my channel. If people are buying this stuff, if you're going to just buy it anyway, just buy it off of the link, and it really does help me out. And a lot of people buying gear that I recommended, which is awesome because I think they enjoyed it and it worked for them the same way it worked for me. None of these brands pay me, you know what I mean? I don't get free anything from any of them. This is just stuff that I like, stuff that I try out, and I've tried a lot of different rods and reel setups over the last decade. So I do have a lot of information as far as that stuff goes. But if you do decide to buy something, use my link and it helps me out. Thank you so much for that, by the way. I'm also this year, I'm gonna try to get some merch going. I had a few people asking me for the hats. You know, if you like the hats, that's cool. If you want to get one, that's very cool. I got sweaters too. I don't know if you're interested in any of that. If you guys are interested in hats or sweaters or any kind of merch at all, just let me know. It's not available because I just didn't think anyone would want it, but a couple people were interested in hats. So If it is something you're interested in, just comment down below and I will make sure that I get something going for you guys. Also, trying to get a boat this year so you guys can go fishing with me, which would be awesome. All right, so I'm gonna break it down. First, I'm gonna start off with something very, like I said, very exciting and something that I did a lot of last year, and that is the crankbait. So what I found, and this was I started doing this, I want to say Kachuma was first, because what I noticed in the springtime of Kachuma is it's just kind of wide open for the types of fishing you can do. Now, like I said, I prefer Senko. My PB, which I'll put that video right here. Just broke my PB. My PB bass, which was almost 9 pounds. I watched her for a couple days. I targeted her for a few hours, and I was able to land that fish. I threw everything at her. So springtime, you kind of are open up to a lot of different things, but if there's a big bass bedding, you want the bait to be in front of them the longest time possible to where they grab it, whether they're hungry and they're not moving off of their bed, or it's an aggression thing and they want to get it out of there. Either way, you want it in front of them. So a lot of these techniques that you use later on, the crankbait, it's moving fast over the fish. The jerk bait, it's suspended in the water. The spinner bait, also moving fast through the water, emulating bait fish, stuff like that. It may still work from time to time, but when these big bass are on beds, it's my opinion that something like a jig, a Senko, or even a drop shot works. I wouldn't use the drop shot because it's just not my way of catching a fish. The Senko, you can kind of beef up the hook like I did with the wide gap finesse hooks. So I also caught my PB on one of those tiny little mosquito hooks, and it was a Senko. So that Senko drops right in front of that fish, and I threw everything at it, which I say in the video. I threw everything at that fish. I threw swim baits, I threw jigs, I threw everything in my arsenal at that fish, and nothing. And all it took was a 5-inch Senko, dropped right in front of her face. Now, again, figuring out where she was and dropping in front of her face is what took me hours and hours because it was windy. I couldn't see her. It was about 12 feet deep. It was tough. But once I had figured it out, I ended up hooking her and catching her. And again, it's because that Senko just sat right in front of her face, and I just got lucky with the presentation. She grabbed it, boom. And it's a fantastic video, so check it out. Check it out when you can. So all that being said, the idea for springtime, at least when the spawn happens, and it's different at every lake, like I said in the last video, is to be able to put the bait in front of their face. When the spawning is over and these fish are hungry and they're feeding, especially the males, they're aggressive, they're running around, they're doing all this stuff. That's when you can switch to some of these other techniques. I'm going to figure out exactly when that is this year. I didn't do it a lot last year because I just had no confidence in it out here. I had heard different stories. Fall's the best time to do it. Summer's the best time to do it. So this year, I think it was summer when I decided to start playing around with the crankbait, and then fall, the crankbait bite just took off, especially at Kachuma. But I managed to catch a bunch, including my first crankbait fish at Castaic as well. So what I did, and I think that, like I said, it was late summer, early fall, when they are going after schools of shad. What you want to do is, what I would coast along the bank, maybe 40, 50 feet away, depending on how deep it is and what lake you're at. San Vicente, that's going to be a little different than, say, Kachuma, because San Vicente, it's very deep in most of the lake, so it just like drops off. So you kind of have to figure it out depending on the lake you're in. So for me, what was most effective, especially at Kachuma, was the little square bill, right? This is the KVD, and this is, I think, the 1 to 3. I think it's 1 to 3 feet. Little square bill here, so it's only it's mostly surface. So those fish, the bass are feeding from below, and they're only at 6 feet at the most. They're sitting in the shallow water areas, and they're biting, they're hitting this from below. They're striking it from below. And I got, I had 40, 50 fish days. It was absolutely ridiculous. So what you want to do is you want to throw this towards shore. And for me, some guys, they crank, stop, crank, 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 stop. And on that stop, they get hit. For me, I don't know why, but for the crankbaits, the jerk baits, things like that, I just burn it. I throw it out and I burn it back and I get hit. I mean, I got tons of fish. It was interesting because me and Juan had two different techniques. Juan would crank, crank, stop, and I would just burn it. And we both caught fish. So it just depends on what works for you. The whole crank, crank, stop, I don't know if that's any better than just burning it because I caught a ton of fish. So what you want to do is cast it towards shore and then burn it back to you. Or do the, crank, crank, stop, whatever you want to do. But the key is with the crankbait is you want to make sure it's getting to the depth that you want it to get to. So you want to be able to throw it far enough to where the initial first cranks, it's actually going underwater to where you want it to go. And let's say you see a tree that might hold a bass, right? Maybe it's a couple feet off of the bank. If that bass is, let's say, 5 foot down, and this is only going to 1 to 3 feet, you want to make sure that it is at that 3 foot range by the time you get over that fish. So this happened to me many times as I started learning this, was you see a tree and maybe you suspect a bass is there, but that tree is, a few feet from the shore. You don't want to cast to the top of that tree because then you're just going to be doing this at the surface and that bass is way down here. So what you want to do is cast past the target if you can, unless they're snugged up next to the shore. Cast past the target, give it a couple of good cranks to make sure that that thing goes under. Make sure it goes under so it is in the exact target range so you can catch it. This becomes really important if you're targeting trees and stuff like this that are underwater, like at Kachuma. There's tons of underwater trees there, and they were all holding the bass. So you want to make sure that you throw past your target and reel down. And this is just for the 1 to 3 footer. That is not including, this is a 6 footer. So this one, depending on where the bass are, remember, they want to feed up. So if the bass are 10 feet down, this is going 6 feet, you need to throw that almost way farther. I know that's not very technical, but you want to throw it much farther than where your target is because that's got to get down to 6 feet. Now, the lip obviously is what is going to get it down that far, but you want to make sure you cast past your target to give that bait the room to get down there to where the fish are going to attack it, especially if it's cold water and they don't want to move too far. They may just want to strike something that's going right above their head. With the casting, with the springtime crankbait, the strike zone was a little bit bigger so you can kind of get away with it in the summertime when the water's like warmer and they're kind of moving around looking for stuff. But otherwise, you want to make sure that the bait is getting to the depth that you want it to get to. I don't use electronics because I don't have a boat and I don't have electronics. So I kind of guess on where the fish are. I kind of watch them. I like to spend a lot of time looking in the water and seeing where these fish are, seeing where I caught them, trying to guesstimate. When you catch a fish, you have to think about all these things. Let's say you catch a fish on a Senko or drop shot or a jig. As you catch it, kind of take note of where your line is, like how far off in the water column it is, how deep you think that is, and as you reel up, if you have to count the reels or count like how many feet you think that is, do it. It's important to figure out what depth these fish are at and where they're feeding at, especially from now until spring. So, pay attention to all these things, especially the depth and where the fish are feeding. So, just to give you another one, I do have a couple of KVD, I think it's the XD5 or whatever they're called, 5X, sorry. And this is a much deeper bait because check out this giant bill. So you want to make sure that if you're going to be using this, you're fishing down to almost like you're targeting fish that are almost like 15 to 20 feet down, and then this will ride on top of them or, hit the surface. So this thing gets down really deep. Also, you want to have a sturdy enough rod set up for this one because this will pull your boat around if you don't have the right rod and reel set up. And honestly, I've thrown this a few times. Oh yeah, by the way, these are the colors that I like to use, okay? I threw this a lot. It's a sort of shad color. Got bit plenty. Then when the water murked up, and I'll show that in this video here with Kachuma, When the water got murky, I switched to something a little bit more visible, the chartreuse, and it got bit almost 10 times more. When I ran out of these two colors, I did use this guy. I forget what this one's called. It's a completely different one. And I also used the red, looks like a little crawfish square bill, and those things got bit. So, depending on the water quality as well. If it's really clear, I think I would go shad color. And if it's a little murkier, go with the chartreuse. And again, switch it up. I got all kinds of different colors because it seemed, especially in Kachuma, they were biting, the kind of bait they're biting. I mean, they're going after bluegill, crappie, just all kinds of bait. So, there's all kinds of different colors you can try. And again, try different ones. Just because they're not biting the shad color does not mean they're not going to bite the chartreuse color. I proved that to myself many different times. As far as the rods go, my two setups, okay, that I use primarily this last year, and this is specifically for crankbait fishing, and I used a couple other applications, which I will tell you as well. But for crankbaits, I was using the Shimano SLX DC. If you guys saw my video at Lake Wolford down in San Diego, I had just bought this and barely used it, and I lost it. It went in the water, and I spent about another hour trying to retrieve it because it was like murky water, so you couldn't see, but I had an idea where it was. And I actually managed to snag it and get it back, which at the time I was pissed off that I lost, a $300 setup. But I hadn't really caught anything on it. I hadn't really used it. So I was like, whatever. And then after this year and how much I used it and how many fish I caught on this, especially top water and crankbait fish, I'm so happy that I got this back. So this is your SLX DC. It is paired with the SLX rod as well. And it is a 610 rod. And it is a, medium action. Sorry, it's a medium rod. And it's extra fast action, which I think worked perfectly for the crankbait. Here's the other one. It's a little bit bigger, but it's the same shallow water, 1 to 3 feet, I think. And the reel is just the DC 150 XG by Shimano. It's the digital one, so it has the little the digital stopping thing. I don't put much stock in the digital thing, and here's why. When you cast this sucker really far, like really into the wind, you're gonna have to reel it anyway. If it doesn't have enough like fall time to bring the line in by itself, which is with its little digital motor, you're still gonna get a bird's nest. So it's still best to keep your thumb on here very lightly to make sure you don't get that bird's nest. Also, these two things, I probably learned the most from, now I'd fished with casting setups in Florida. Again, you saw my swim bait casting setup. I do have another casting setup. It was the first one I bought in California. And it was like, I just wanted something inexpensive to mess around with. And it was the Abu Garcia Black Max. Oh, I cannot tell you how much I hate this setup. I mean, it's cheap. That's why I bought it at the time. But it is garbage. I've tried to fish with this thing, and it is just garbage. I don't know if it's the rod is 6.6 or it's just a bad reel, but do not get the Black Max by Abu Garcia. Just don't do it. I have not been able to get that thing to do anything for me. So, that being said, back to the SLX DC. The three things that will help you use a casting setup more and with more confidence, which helped for me, was when you have your bait, what you do is, and this is just about tuning your reel, hit the release button, right? And your bait should not, your bait should very slowly fall depending on the weight of the bait. This is how you kind of tune it for whatever weight of what you're throwing, whether it's a jig or a jerk bait or or a crankbait. So you want it to have a kind of a slower, I know you guys can't see it, don't want to switch the camera over there. But what you want to do is make sure that, and this is what my buddy Juan taught me this year, is that it just kind of slowly falls, okay? That is how you start the tuning process, but that is only half of it. Once you have that part ready to go. Now, different setups, I'll show you my other one too. You want to look at this little knob here, this little dial. It's very important that this is how you tune your casting reel, okay? The little knob here, it's got a little set of numbers and a little things in it. Mine is set on 2. So the lower it is, the lighter the lure, okay? The lighter the lure, the lower the number. But try it out, you know, test it, see what works for your specific reel. Because once you have that tuned specifically to the weight of that lure, you're not going to ever get a bird's nest. I mean, and you barely have to put your, like, once it's tuned properly, you don't have to even put your thumb on it. It just, and that's not just the digital one, my Daiwa as well. Once it's tuned to the weight of that exact lure, it is unbelievable. You can just throw it and throw it and throw it with the confidence that it's not going to get bird's nest, and you're not going to spend hours just untangling your line when you could be fishing. So that is the setup. Again, I'm going to have this linked below. So if you guys want one, this has been a great setup for me, not just for crankbaits, but I started using the SLX with top water, and it is fantastic. I mean, you can sling this thing a mile, because I've got, I think, 10-pound fluoro on here. You could sling it a mile, and I caught so many fish on top. And the rod it's sensitive, so you can kind of feel what's going on in the water with the crankbait, but it's got enough backbone that when that top water strike hits, you can kind of, you can just be confident that you're not going to miss it. I don't think I missed very many top water fish on this last year, and it was fantastic. And you can throw kind of bigger lures. I'm going to show you my top water setups too. Maybe on the next video though. All right, so my other setup for the crankbait bite is, and this has been one of my favorites. This is the Daiwa Tatula TWS 8-to-1 reel. There it is. It is fantastic. And I've got it paired up with the Tatula XT rod as well, HVF. So 7-footer. Let's see. Sorry, I'm just trying to see here. Yeah, 7-footer. Yeah, it is fantastic. The Daiwa XT rod is fantastic, paired with the Tatula TWS. I'm sorry, I'm trying to find the... Anyway, it is fantastic. This setup has been great. I use it primarily for crankbait fishing, and then I switched to the jig fishing later on in the fall when I was trying to get the jig fish bite, which I did. I caught a few on the jig, which was awesome. This thing has just been great, and especially, like I said, it doesn't have the digital stopper like the SLX does. But once I got this sucker tuned into the crankbait, again, I rarely had to put my thumb on it to stop from the backlash. It is just, once you tune this one, man, it is unstoppable. And again, it's got the knob right there. It's called like Mega Force or something like that. It's got the knob and the numbers. And again, the lower, if you notice, let's see, this one's a little higher because the jig is a little heavier than the crankbait. So this one's at like, I got it at like 4. So, and just try it. Try to tune it, like I said, by dropping it and tightening, tightening the drag to where whatever lure is just barely falling. If you hit the release button, it just barely falls. If it falls too much, it's going to be way too much and you're going to get backlash. It's got to have that nice little sweet spot where it pulls just a little bit down on its own weight. And then you want to use the little knob here and tune it up the right way, because once it's in, and try different things. While you're trying it, obviously put your thumb, so you don't get backlash as much. But once you get it tuned to the weight of whatever lure you're throwing, this thing is going to be unstoppable too. And this is fantastic. There's something about this that I like more than the SLX. So the SLX is, sorry, the SLX is very light. It's very lightweight, and it is fantastic because when you're lugging this thing around and you are, sorry, trying to, so you can see both of them. When you're lugging all these rods around, the SLX is light, and it's fantastic for that reason. This thing feels, it's not heavy, but it feels a little bit more durable. When you got it in your hand like this, when you're gripping this, it feels like a gun. It just feels like it's like a part of your body, which is great when you're doing this kind of fishing and you're trying to feel what the bottom feels like. You're trying to feel those bites that, you know, as you're dragging something through weeds or something, you want to be able to feel the bite. Or something about this one that I just love. Once I got it tuned and figured it out, this thing was just incredible. So great. So again, if you're looking, and these are inexpensive. Both of those setups are inexpensive. I will put the links in the description. If you're interested in a casting setup it's relatively inexpensive, easy to use, get one of those two. They are fantastic. And so, you know, use the link below. So there we got the baits. You can get those below as well. I mostly use the KVDs, but I do have a couple of Rapalas. So, you know, click on the link. I'll provide all the information there, everything you need to get going on the crankbait bite. And hey, try throwing the crankbait in spring. See what happens. Yeah, that is it. Thank you so much, guys. Thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.